take it on the chin, and keep moving forward.
It should scare you a little bit, you know? You should be a little bit intimidated of what you're about to go put yourself through. And we've had many weddings since then, and even those, like, I've brought my own meals to that.
You don't have a routine and a plan for you to be able to execute on a daily basis, and it feels like you're just pulling from all over, randomly, just trying to make everything work. It's never gonna lead to success, genuinely.
Guys, what's going on?
Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we are in training back and legs. Just wanted to give an update on where the prep is at. We are officially 10 weeks out, which means that this coming week we are going to be inside single digits, which is obviously very exciting. We've already been dieting for 22 some odd weeks at this point, so things that I'm going to share in this video with you today are going to be 5 of my biggest tips that I use for fat loss, either in a contest prep setting or just in a general fat loss diet, get lean for the summer kind of phase. I say summer, it's actually pretty nice out right now. It's been like 95 degrees for probably the last like few months, and right now it's like 70, so feels fantastic. I am getting a little bit of that taste of like that fall weather, which I absolutely love everything about fall. I like the pumpkin spice lattes. I like the cold weather. I like being able to wear stuff like this and not seem ridiculous, because generally when you get leaner, you are just colder most of the time. So I was very excited when I could put this on today, and it felt like it wasn't completely irrational. So we're gonna go in, like I said, we're gonna trade back and legs. Some things have changed about this session, so I'm gonna walk you through not just my thought process behind the particular movements, but also why we made the adjustments that we did, and just guide you through it. And hopefully you guys pick up some good things that you can bring into your back training or your hip hinges or whatever it might be. So let's dive into the session. So we start the session off with the flex ham tractor here, or any type of seated leg curl. Personally, this is just my favorite one that I like to use here. The main focus of this is going to be pre-exhausting the hamstrings before we go into the hip hinge, which for today is going to be the barbell RDL. That's something that's been in now for a couple weeks. When I was in the earlier years of my training, I really liked to go ahead and get that movement, not out of the way, but I wanted to prioritize it, and I wanted to hit it first, versus the approach that I've taken more in recent years is having a couple movements that are ahead of the big movement, so to speak, as a way to kind of pre-exhaust and to really build a connection with whatever muscle that you're trying to target in that particular compound movement ahead of when you actually go in and hit it. So now when I go into RDLs, instead of feeling like I'm warming up cold, I am able to go into it, already have a solid hamstring pump, and I already feel really warm, not just physically, but neurologically as well. I've hit a couple hard sets here. I've hit a top set and a back off. So it's not like I'm trying to come in from the street and get myself amped up and get ready to go, you know, hinge over with 405 or something like that. I'm going in having already done a little bit of work, so I feel warm on both sides, physically and mentally. Push! 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 Stop!
You really got lean.
All right, as we're warming up here for RDLs, we need you guys tip number 1. Of the 5, number 1 when it comes to fat loss, and that is consistency. Consistency, you guys have heard this before, but what does that actually look like in practical application? So thinking back to the last 22 weeks of this fat loss phase that we've been in, you know, the early stages of prep, you got to think back on how many times have I actually had meals personally away from the plan? And the answer is twice, when it was programmed in and they were very far out, like 29 weeks out, 30 weeks out, something like that. And they were one for Easter and then the other was for a wedding. And we've had many weddings since then. And even those, I brought my own meals to that. Now, is that absolutely necessary for everybody? Not in the slightest, but the thing is that the amount of consistency that I have with that is that I'm hitting the meals that I'm supposed to get. I'm getting the steps in that I need to get in, 99.5% of the time. So extrapolate that out. You're going to get a lot better results than if you are really hyper consistent with it on Monday through Thursday afternoon, or even Friday midday, and then Friday from the evening on through the end of the weekend. You're all over the place, or you're not really tracking or paying attention to the food that you're taking in or the workouts that you're hitting or anything like that. So, and then you think about the actual level of consistency that you hit with that is something 66% of the week or 70% of the week. So think about that stacked up week over week over week over week, and you'd understand why. If the goal is fat loss, you're maybe not seeing fat loss either at the rate that you want to, or you're not seeing it come off at all. The main thing you want to think about is consistency, and how do you formulate a plan so that you can actually be consistent on a very, very regular and predictable basis. And that is going to be in tip number 2. We'll come to that in a minute. Another thing that I would recommend when it comes to your priority movements is making sure that you do not rush through the warm-up process, especially when you get to the point where you're a little bit stronger and you can move a little bit more weight. I'm going to take these warm-ups one plate at a time, even though I already have warmed up in the hamstring curl, because I very much so want to be emulating movement that I'm going to be hitting on my top set and be very, very mindful of what cues I'm trying to remember while I'm going to go into it. So it helps me get my mind right, but it also helps me remember what it is that I'm actually supposed to be doing and emphasizing throughout the course of the working sets. So oftentimes I just see guys who are either on their phone between their warm-ups, or they're looking at their watch and they just can't wait to go again. It's almost 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever is how quick that they'll wait. They'll want to just jump right back into it. And really, you want to be patient with it and allow yourself to kind of have that slow, gradual ramp up. And then especially between your last warm-up and working set, give yourself 3 to 5 minutes. Put a good song on, get into the right headspace for it, because that working set should be challenging you to the degree where it should scare you a little bit. You should be a little bit intimidated of what you're about to go put yourself through, because that means that you're training hard enough that you're going to elicit a growth response. So focus on that while you're going throughout your warm-ups, but especially between that last warm-up and the working set, make sure that you take the time to really put yourself in the right frame of mind. Go on. Whoa!
Oh, okay. Come on. All right, 2 working sets on the RDL done. Not super thrilled with those, but that's just because I'm down a rep from where I was last week, but I also felt fantastic last week. So it's kind of gonna be the nature of it. Not gonna be able to come in and feel like you're Superman every single day, especially when you're dieting for long periods of time. You're getting leaner, you're getting lighter. So given that I'm 1.5 pounds down or so from last week, that's okay. As long as I just don't keep losing reps, it's the main goal. So if that means that the top set is 405 for 7, like so be it. I'll try to get the 8th rep again next week, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, the point number 2 for fat loss. So we had consistency first. Second bit is structure. So if you don't have a routine and a plan for you to be able to execute on a daily basis, and it feels like you're just pulling from all over randomly, just trying to make everything work, it's never gonna lead to success, genuinely. Not success to the degree that you could have if you had a system in place for you to be able to consistently nail things on a daily basis over and over and over again. So a lot of that has to do with just your daily routine and how your day's set up. So it's gonna have to work around your work. It's gonna have to work on your responsibilities and your commitments. But you should have a really good idea of what the ideal structure is for your day and know when things need to get done. So like for me, I know that when I start the day off, I start off with 6,000 steps because I have 12,500 that I need to get throughout the course of the day. So if I go ahead and eat those up real nice and early, I come in the gym, I get a few thousand steps while I'm here when I train, and then it's basically at the end of the day, even if I have a bump in the schedule, or if I end up having to do something in the morning or whatever it is, and it looks different from my typical daily routine, I still am able to adjust because I still got those steps done very, very early before I had any other prior commitments. So even if I'm a little behind, it's not like I'm trying to get, 10,000 steps and it's already 5 p.m. Same thing with your nutrition, same thing with your training. Have a very set time where you're gonna be able to be doing everything. And if it feels like it's too much or you can't manage it, then something probably needs to be adjusted about the structure itself, or you just have to reassess the goal and the timeline, because a lot of times maybe the goal either is not realistic or the speed at which you want to achieve it is just not feasible. Everybody wants to lose 50 pounds in 30 days. It doesn't work like that. Not if you want to do everything right and preserve muscle along the way. So just stretch out the timeline a little bit if it feels like you don't have the time to get everything that you need to make happen on a daily basis. But the structure is really a big, big factor. The other thing is, again, leading into point number 3, which we'll give when we go upstairs. But you got to be able to roll with the punches, man. You got to be able to roll with the punches. We'll talk more about that in a second. No, he already did it too, so don't feel alone. I just said, like I said, I'm a big freaking mess. I'm taking up too much space. So a little while back, we made a switch from the pendulum to the Squat Pro. I was running the pendulum forever, and it was coming to a point where the movement was just getting stale. I was not getting as much out of it as I normally want to. So moving over to something fresh and new, and something that I feel like hits my quads a lot better, was a good move. Part of that was just because the pendulum really is, it's really heavy in the mid-range, and I would find myself either getting stuck there or that being like the limiting factor of how far I can push the set. So moving over to the Squat Pro, I feel like I can get a little bit more out of this one quad set that I have. But I just want to bring up from what we were talking about down in the basement, and that is point number 3 for what can you do to create a successful fat loss phase. So we talked about consistency, we talked about structure and routine. Number 3 is going to be resiliency. So what that means is when something happens that throws that structure routine that we were talking about in step 2, when something happens that throws that off, the thing that you need to do is basically take it on the chin and keep moving forward. So, and that might even mean in some instances when you're first getting going and the first couple years of figuring out how to diet and how to train, that might mean that you have a day that's not fantastic. That means that, you know, maybe there was a day where you ate away from whatever your plan was or whatever your macros were, or you didn't get the activity in that you needed to get, or you didn't get to your training session, or something came up in your day. The resiliency is taking it on the chin and just moving forward, not trying to compensate for it and say, oh, I'll accumulate for it tomorrow, because then it becomes this ever compounding cycle of I'll make up for it tomorrow, and then tomorrow you have even more to do because you didn't get to it that day. So, and then you end up pushing it off and giving up on the goal entirely. So the main thing is take it, accept it, and move on and just get back to the plan the next day. Not thinking like you have to go and make up for all of that lost time or that lost effort or the lost calories or whatever it is. The resiliency is keeping not just the plan in place, but also keeping your chin up and maintaining a positive outlook on the entire process all throughout it. Because there are going to be days where you're not going to be feeling it as much, you're not going to feel as motivated, especially before the visual changes start to come in. It just feels like you're doing a lot of work and it's not really amounting to anything. You keep moving forward and you keep your chin up in that process, and I promise you the results that are on the other side of that will be totally worth it. Okay. Oh! Bad! Right! Punch! 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 Oh! All right, you'll notice when I'm working on these pull downs that I'm using the suboptimal grip. The one that's super duper narrow and limits your range of motion. And this ties into point number 4, which is to focus on the things that actually matter. There's 10 million things that you can see on the internet and scrolling on Instagram and TikTok of do this, don't do that. I hope that the tips that I'm giving here, by comparison, seem very simplistic, easy to understand, and you can go and implement them, and it doesn't feel like I'm overloading you with information that you probably doesn't even actually matter at the end of the day. Do you need to do your cardio fasted? Do you need to have a fat loss burning agent like yohimbine or something like that in there into your protocol? The real thing is going to be to focus on the things that actually move the needle forward. The narrow suboptimal grip, that works well for me. I connect with my lats well on that, and I also have one that's more optimal in my pull day when I do my actual single arm work, and it aligns a little bit better with my lat. But I like the feel of those for right now, so I'm going to continue to rock with them the same way that a lot of the things that are in your process might not work for absolutely everybody, but that's why you have it individualized. And that's why you got to have somebody that helps you along that can maybe point out, okay, maybe focus on this, maybe don't pay as much attention to that, or that doesn't really matter, get that out of your mind and don't really worry as much about that. So that's going to tie into the 5th point that I'll give you here in a bit. We're going to nail these pull downs. We do have a horizontal row, chest supported, that we'll go ahead and hit, but I'll catch up with you guys at the hip thrust for point number 5. Push. 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 All right, we pulled the old switcheroo that you thought that was going to be a hip thrust. Fooled you. Just kidding. Somebody was on it, so we're going to have to switch up the order of the session a little bit, which is perfectly fine. We're going to nail rear delts and then do some biceps, potentially come back to the hip thrust, but I want to give you point number 5 of how to set up a successful fat loss phase, and that is accountability. This might be the one that people miss the most. So if you're wondering from the last point what you need to focus on, get somebody that can be in your corner that can actually help direct you with that, but then also to hold you to what you say that you're going to do. Because most people are not actually holding themselves to the standard that they want to achieve. So you need to be honest with yourself and either get yourself in a spot where you can hold yourself accountable, hire a coach. If you don't have a coach, then put yourself in a position where you have someone that is knowledgeable or has, you know, your best interest in mind and can actually call you out on your crap when you don't hold to the standard that you're trying to upkeep. So that being said, that might be a friend, it might be a training partner, might be a family member, but somebody who you tell your goal to and you say, hey, I'm going to be responsible for these things, and you can regularly checking in with them so that they know that you're doing what you said that you were going to do. And obviously you get the ability with a coach where they can guide you in that process as well, not just pat you on the back when you're doing well and tell you to do better when you're not doing so well, but also kind of direct you when things are lacking. Hey, what can we do differently that actually improves the process? And it's not just, hey, try harder, or hey, do more, or hey, figure it out, bro. But it's actually, hey, how can we actually change the plan so that this is smarter and more intelligent? What are the things about your training and your nutrition protocols and your supplementation and the things that you do on a daily basis, stress management? What are the adjustments that we can make, the little 1% and 2% changes that we can implement in order to actually see massive progress over the course of one particular phase, but then also too in the long term, because obviously you don't want to be dieting forever. So there will come a point where the goal is probably to get bigger and to put on more muscle. So who's guiding you along in that process? And again, like just the overload of information that you see online right now, it can be very dizzying and very nauseating. You see the amount of people that are telling you what seems like contradictory things. So having somebody that you trust and you just listen to them, this is especially important when you're in a contest prep phase, because everybody seems to want to chip in their 2 cents and to give their opinion on, you know, what's best or what you should be doing or where you're at in the timeline, when realistically the only person that you should be listening to that actually changes what you would be doing is your coach. So having somebody in your corner like that has benefited me massively, and I know that it's been a benefit to the people that take their goals seriously. So if you do take your goals seriously, have somebody that's in your corner, whether that's a coach or a friend or a training partner or something. Push! 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 All All right, guys, so we just wrapped up the session. Hopefully the 5 tips that I gave you will help you in your fat loss phase. Again, thank you for everybody who's been following along with this prep. 10 weeks out from show number 1, I'm gonna continue to take you guys through this process and show you every little bit of it, even the parts that are not so fun and are a little bit more ugly and painful about it, because that's part of the beauty of it that actually gets us to the point where we feel like we accomplished something that was worthwhile. You know, nothing that's worth anything wasn't a challenge. Everything is always hard when it's worth something. So I'm gonna continue to guide you guys through that. Like I said before, like and subscribe to keep along with the prep series, and we will see you in the next one.